One Saturday, we met at the botanical gardens. It was raining, the kind of soft, steady rain that made the world feel hushed and secret. We wandered through the glasshouses, surrounded by lush greenery and the gentle patter of water on the roof. Diana stopped in front of a wall of orchids, her fingers tracing the delicate petals. "I used to come here with Emily when she was little," she said, her voice wistful. "She loved the butterflies. I'd watch her run from flower to flower, so full of wonder. I miss those days." I watched her, seeing the sadness in her eyes, the longing for a time when things were simpler. I wanted to reach out, to hold her, but I knew we had to be careful. Instead, I stood close, letting my presence speak for me. "You're still that person," I said softly. "The one who finds beauty in the world, who makes other people feel seen. You haven't lost that." She looked at me, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You make me feel like I matter, Ethan. Like I'm more than just someone's wife, someone's mother." "You are," I said, my voice steady. "You're Diana. And you're incredible." We walked in silence for a while, the rain blurring the world outside the glass. I thought about how easy it would be to get lost in this moment, to forget about the complications waiting for us outside. But I knew we couldn't hide forever. As we left the gardens, Diana stopped me just before we reached the exit. She looked around, making sure no one was watching, then leaned in and kissed me. It was quick, almost furtive, but it sent a jolt through me that left me breathless. "I needed that," she whispered, her lips brushing my ear. "Thank you." We parted ways, each of us heading back to our separate lives, but I carried the memory of her kiss with me all day. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. I thought about the risks we were taking, the people we could hurt. I thought about Emily, about how she would feel if she knew. The guilt gnawed at me, but it couldn't drown out the happiness I felt when I was with Diana. A few days later, Diana called me, her voice trembling. "Can we meet? I need to talk." We met at the cafe, sitting in our usual corner. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed with worry. "What's wrong?" I asked, reaching for her hand. She hesitated, then squeezed my fingers. "Emily's been asking questions. She noticed I've been different lately, happier, I guess. She asked if there was someone else." My stomach twisted. "What did you say?" I told her I was just enjoying my work, that I'd started painting again. But I don't think she believed me. She's always been perceptive. I nodded, understanding the fear in her eyes. "Do you want to stop? We can, if it's too much." She shook her head, her grip tightening. "No, I don't want to stop. I don't know how to handle this. I don't want to hurt her." "We'll be careful," I promised. "We'll take it one day at a time." She smiled, a little sadly. "Thank you, Ethan, for being patient, for not running away." "I'm not going anywhere," I said, meaning every word. We sat together, hands entwined, letting the silence settle around us. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, that there would be moments of doubt and fear. But I also knew that what we had was real, and that was worth fighting for. As the days passed, we found new ways to be together. Sometimes it was just a phone call, a text, a shared memory. Other times, it was a stolen afternoon in the park, a walk by the river, a quiet dinner in a restaurant where no one knew our names. Each moment was a reminder that happiness could be found in the most unexpected places. One evening, as we watched the sun set over the city, Diana turned to me, her eyes full of hope and uncertainty. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. "About what might happen if we stopped hiding?" "All the time," I admitted. "I think about what it would be like to wake up next to you, to build a life together. But I also know it won't be easy." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I'm scared, Ethan. But I want to try. I want to see what's possible." I took her hand, holding it tightly. "We'll figure it out. Together." As the sky faded to twilight, I realized that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what the future might hold. As long as I had Diana by my side, I knew we could face anything. We talked for hours, about art and music and the little joys that made life bearable. She told me about her childhood, about the dreams she'd given up when she married into the Whitmore family. I told her about my own struggles, about the pressure to succeed, about the fear of disappointing the people I cared about. As the morning slipped into afternoon, I realized how easy it was to talk to her, how natural it felt to share things I'd never told anyone else. She listened without judgment, her eyes kind and understanding. When it was time to leave, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you, Ethan, for listening, for seeing me." I squeezed back, my heart pounding. "Anytime, Diana. Really." We stood, gathering our things. She hesitated, then leaned in and kissed my cheek, her lips warm and soft against my skin. "See you soon?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "Yeah," I said, barely able to breathe. "See you soon." As I watched her walk away, I knew that nothing about this was simple. But for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. The days that followed felt like a secret I carried in my chest, a quiet thrill that colored everything I did. I went through the motions at work, answered emails, sat in meetings, but my mind kept drifting back to Diana, her laughter, the way she listened, the gentle touch of her hand on mine. I found myself checking my phone more often, hoping for a message, a sign that she was thinking of me too. We started meeting regularly, always in out-of-the-way places where we wouldn't run into anyone she knew. Sometimes it was the little cafe, sometimes a walk in the park, sometimes just sitting in her car, talking for hours while the world moved on around us. Each time, the connection between us grew stronger, the conversations deeper, the silences more comfortable. One afternoon, we met at a small art gallery on the edge of the city. The place was nearly empty, the walls lined with abstract paintings and sculptures that seemed to vibrate with color and energy. Diana wandered from piece to piece, her eyes bright with curiosity. "I used to dream about having my own studio," she said, pausing in front of a canvas splashed with blues and golds. "A place where I could just create, without worrying about what anyone else thought." "What stopped you?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She smiled sadly. "Life. Expectations. I got married, had Emily, and suddenly my dreams didn't seem as important as everyone else's. I wanted to tell her that it wasn't too late, that she could still chase those dreams, but I didn't want to sound naive. Instead, I stood beside her, letting the silence speak for us. After a while, she turned to me, her expression serious. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" "All the time," I admitted. "Sometimes I look around and wonder how I got here, if this is really what I wanted or just what I thought I was supposed to want." She nodded, her eyes distant. "It's easy to lose yourself, isn't it?" "Yeah," I said softly. "But maybe it's not too late to find yourself again." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt something shift between us, a sense of possibility, of hope. We left the gallery and walked along the river, the city skyline glowing in the late afternoon sun. Diana talked about her art, about the things she wanted to try, the places she wanted to see. I listened, encouraging her, reminding her that her dreams still mattered. As we reached the end of the path, she stopped and turned to face me. "Ethan, I need to ask you something." "Anything," I said, my heart pounding. "Why are you doing this? Spending time with me, listening to me, caring about what I want? You could be with someone your own age, someone without all this complication." I hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because you make me feel seen. Because when I'm with you, I don't have to pretend. You're honest and brave, and you make me want to be better. I don't care about the complications. I care about you." She looked away, blinking back tears. "I'm scared, Ethan. I'm scared of what people will say, of what Emily will think, of what this could do to my family." "I know," I said gently. "But you deserve to be happy. You deserve to live your own life, not just the one everyone else expects." She reached out then, her hand trembling as she touched my cheek. I wish I could be as brave as you think I am. You already are, I whispered, leaning into her touch. For a moment, the world fell away, the river, the city, the expectations and fears. There was only us, standing together in the fading light, holding on to something fragile and real. We parted ways at the train station, promising to see each other soon. As I watched her disappear into the crowd, I felt a strange mix of hope and dread. I knew what we were doing was risky, that the consequences could be devastating. But I also knew that I couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when I'd finally found someone who understood me. That night, I lay awake, replaying every moment, every word, every touch. I thought about Emily, about how she would feel if she knew. I thought about Diana's husband, about the life she'd built and the sacrifices she'd made. I wondered if I was being selfish, if I was asking too much. But then I remembered the look in Diana's eyes, the way she'd smiled when she talked about her art, the way she'd held my hand like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I realized that sometimes, happiness comes at a cost, and that maybe, just maybe, it was worth paying. The next morning, Diana texted me. Thank you for yesterday. I haven't felt that alive in years. Can we meet again soon? Of course, I replied, my heart soaring. Name the time and place. We met that afternoon at a quiet park on the edge of town. We sat on a bench beneath a canopy of trees, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her favorite books, the ones she read over and over when she needed comfort. I told her about my childhood, about the summers the first spent at my grandparents' cabin, about the way the world seemed simpler back then. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Diana turned to me, her eyes shining. I don't know where this is going, Ethan. I don't know if I'm brave enough to see it through. But I want to try. I want to see what happens if I stop being afraid. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. We'll figure it out together. She smiled, a real, unguarded smile, and for the first time, I believed we could. The weeks that followed felt like living in a dream I was afraid to wake from. Diana and I carved out a world of our own, hidden in the quiet corners of the city, in art galleries, parks, and coffee shops where no one knew us. Each meeting was a stolen moment, precious and fleeting, but it was enough. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. We grew bolder, too. Sometimes Diana would text me late at night, her words full of longing and uncertainty. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about you. About us. Is it wrong to want this so much? I'd reply, it's not wrong to want to be happy. I think we both deserve that. She'd send a heart, or sometimes just a simple, thank you for understanding me. Her honesty caught me off guard. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I didn't know if it was my place. Instead, I sat back down, giving her space to say what she needed. She moved closer, sitting on the edge of a leather armchair across from me. You were always kind to me, even when things with Emily were difficult. I noticed that. I noticed you. I felt my cheeks flush, unsure how to respond. You were always good to me, too. I appreciated that, even if I never said it. We sat in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. I could hear the faint strains of music from the ballroom, the clink of glasses and the hum of conversation. But in that moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Diana looked down at her hands, twisting a ring around her finger. My marriage hasn't been what people think for a long time. We're good at pretending, at keeping up appearances. But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to stop pretending. Her vulnerability was disarming. I wanted to tell her that I understood, that I'd spent months pretending to be okay after Emily and I broke up, pretending that I didn't care. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to want things for yourself. She looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Do you really believe that? I nodded, my voice steady. I do. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but she took a deep breath and composed herself. Thank you, Ethan. I don't hear that very often. We talked for a while longer, about art and books and the little things that made us feel alive. She told me about a painting she'd started but never finished, how she'd lost the inspiration somewhere along the way. I told her about my new job, how it wasn't what I'd hoped but it paid the bills. As the night wore on, the party began to wind down. Guests started saying their goodbyes, gathering coats and exchanging promises to keep in touch. Diana stood, smoothing her dress. "I should go," she said, her voice reluctant. "Thank you for listening." I stood, too, not wanting the moment to end. "Anytime." She hesitated, then reached out and squeezed my hand, just for a second. The touch was electric, sending a jolt through me that I tried to hide. "Good night, Ethan," she said, her voice soft. "Good night, Diana." She slipped out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat back down, staring at the spot where she'd been. I knew I should leave, but I couldn't bring myself to move. Her words echoed in my mind, mixing with memories of Emily and the life I'd left behind. Eventually, I made my way to the front door, saying a quick goodbye to Emily and Carter. The drive home was quiet, the city lights blurring past as I replayed the night in my head. I wondered what would happen next, if anything would happen at all. When I got home, I found myself staring at my phone, half expecting a message from Diana. But there was nothing. I lay awake for hours, the image of her standing in the garden, whispering those impossible words, burned into my mind. The next morning, sunlight crept through my blinds, but I barely noticed. I'd slept fitfully, my dreams a jumble of gardens, whispered confessions, and the soft press of Diana's hand in mine. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just the strangeness of the night, the nostalgia of being back in a world I'd left behind. But the feeling lingered, stubborn and insistent. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through my phone. No new messages. I almost laughed at myself. What was I expecting? Diana was married, the mother of my ex-girlfriend, and I was just a guest at her party. Whatever had passed between us was probably nothing more than a fleeting moment, a crack in the mask she wore for everyone else. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The way her voice had trembled, the honesty in her eyes. I wondered what it would be like to see her outside the confines of the estate, away from the expectations and the watchful eyes of her family. I wondered if she ever thought about me, or if I was just another face in a long line of guests who drifted in and out of her life. I tried to distract myself with work, but my mind kept wandering. I replayed our conversation in the library, searching for hidden meanings, for signs that I hadn't imagined the connection between us. I told myself it was ridiculous, that I was reading too much into a few kind words and a gentle touch. But the feeling wouldn't go away. That afternoon, as I was finishing up some paperwork, my phone buzzed. My heart leapt, but it was just a reminder for a dentist appointment. I sighed, feeling foolish, and tossed my phone onto the couch. A few minutes later, it buzzed again. This time, it was a message from an unknown number. "Hi, Ethan. I hope you don't mind that I got your number from Emily's phone. This is Diana. I just wanted to thank you again for last night. It meant more to me than you know." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I read the message 3 times before I could bring myself to reply. "Of course, Diana. I enjoyed talking with you too. If you ever want to finish telling me about that painting, I'd love to hear more." I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then set my phone down and tried to act normal. But I couldn't focus on anything else. Minutes ticked by, each one slower than the last. Finally, my phone buzzed again. "I'd like that. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? There's a little cafe near the park. It's quiet, and I don't think anyone from my world goes there." I smiled, feeling a rush of excitement and guilt all at once. I knew I should say no, that it was a bad idea, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. "Tomorrow works for me." "What time?" 10 a.m. "I'll see you there." The rest of the day passed in a blur. I tried to convince myself that it was just coffee, just 2 people talking about art and life. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I could feel it in the way my hands shook when I set my alarm, in the way I rehearsed what I might say, in the way I couldn't stop thinking about her. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe early, my nerves jangling. I chose a table in the corner, away from the windows, and ordered 2 coffees, one black, one with cream and sugar, just in case. I checked my phone every few minutes, half expecting her to cancel. But at exactly 10 a.m., Diana walked in. She looked different, more relaxed, almost casual. She wore jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She smiled when she saw me, a real smile that made my chest ache. "Hi," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Hi," I replied, suddenly shy. "I got you a coffee. I hope that's okay." She glanced at the cup, surprised. "You remembered how I take it." "Small details matter," I said, echoing her words from the night before. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping our coffee and watching the world go by outside. The cafe was quiet, just a few other customers scattered at tables, lost in their own conversations. Diana set her cup down and looked at me, her expression serious. "I'm sorry if I made things awkward last night. I didn't mean to put you in a difficult position." "You didn't," I said quickly. "I was glad to see you. I meant what I said. You deserve to be happy." She nodded, her eyes shining. "It's just hard, sometimes, to remember that I'm allowed to want things for myself." I never thought I'd be back at the Whitmore estate, not after everything that happened with Emily. The last time I'd seen her, we were standing in her apartment, voices low and brittle, packing up the last of my things. That was almost a year ago, but the memory still felt fresh, like a bruise that never quite faded. So when her name flashed on my phone 2 weeks ago, inviting me to her mother's birthday party, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity, or maybe pride, got the better of me. I wanted to prove to myself that I was over her, that I could walk into that house and not feel anything. The Whitmore estate was just as I remembered, grand, intimidating, and a little too perfect. The driveway curved through manicured gardens, the kind of place where every blade of grass seemed to know its place. I parked my car behind a line of luxury sedans and took a deep breath before stepping out. The air was thick with the scent of roses and something else. Anticipation, maybe, or just my own nerves. Inside, the party was in full swing. Waiters in crisp uniforms floated through the crowd, balancing trays of champagne and tiny hors d'oeuvres. Laughter echoed off marble floors and high ceilings. Emily spotted me almost immediately, her eyes widening in surprise before she composed herself and crossed the room with that effortless grace I used to love. We exchanged a polite hug, the kind that says we're both trying too hard, and she introduced me to her new boyfriend, a tall, well-dressed guy named Carter who shook my hand with just a little too much enthusiasm. I made small talk, smiled at the right moments, and tried not to think about how strange it felt to be a guest in a life I used to be part of. After a while, I slipped out to the garden, needing a break from the noise and the memories. The evening was warm, the sky streaked with the last colors of sunset. I wandered down a path lined with lavender, the flowers brushing against my hands as I walked. That's when I heard her voice, soft, almost a whisper, but clear enough to stop me in my tracks. "I wish I had a lover like you." The words hung in the air, delicate and dangerous. I turned, heart pounding, and saw her standing alone by the fountain. Mrs. Whitmore, Diana, looked nothing like the woman I remembered from family dinners and holiday gatherings. Her hair was pulled back in a loose chignon, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore a simple navy dress that made her look both elegant and vulnerable. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined it. But then she glanced over her shoulder and saw me, her eyes widening in surprise and something else. Fear, maybe, or regret. I hesitated, unsure if I should pretend I hadn't heard, but she spoke first. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady now. "I didn't realize anyone was out here." I tried to play it cool, but my mind was racing. "Sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I just needed some air." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's all right. Sometimes I forget how many people are around." We stood there in awkward silence, the sound of the party drifting out through open windows. I wanted to ask her what she meant, why she'd said what she did, but I didn't know how. Instead, I found myself studying her face, noticing the fine lines around her eyes, the way her lips pressed together when she was thinking. "Are you enjoying the party?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. "It's nice," I said, which was a lie. A little overwhelming, to be honest. She laughed softly, a sound that surprised me. "You and me both." I glanced back at the house, where Emily and Carter were dancing in the glow of crystal chandeliers. "It's strange being here," I admitted. "I wasn't sure if I should come." Diana looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I'm glad you did," she said finally. "It's good to see you." There was something in her voice that made me feel seen, really seen, for the first time in months. I realized how lonely I'd been, how much I missed being part of something, even if it was complicated. We talked for a while, about nothing and everything. The weather, the garden, the way time seemed to move differently in places like this. She told me about her work with a local art charity, how she'd started painting again after years of putting it aside. I listened, drawn in by the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about color and light. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, I found myself relaxing, the tension in my shoulders easing. It felt good to talk to someone who wasn't judging me, who didn't expect anything except honesty. Then, as if remembering herself, Diana glanced back at the house. "I should go," she said, her voice soft. "People will wonder where I am." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She started to walk away, then paused and turned back to me. "Thank you for listening," she said. "It's been a long time since I felt like someone really heard me." I watched her disappear into the glow of the party, my mind spinning with questions and possibilities. I knew I should go back inside, rejoin the crowd, but I couldn't move. Her words echoed in my mind, impossible to ignore. "I wish I had a lover like you." I stood in the garden for a long time after Diana left, the night air cooling my skin and the scent of lavender lingering around me. The party inside seemed a world away, muffled by the thick stone walls and the distance I'd put between myself and everyone else. I replayed her words in my mind, trying to decide if I'd misunderstood, if maybe she'd meant something else. But the way she'd looked at me, vulnerable, almost pleading, told me I hadn't imagined it. Eventually, I forced myself back inside, weaving through clusters of guests who barely noticed me. Emily was laughing with Carter near the bar, her head thrown back in a way that used to make my heart ache. I caught her eye for a moment, and she smiled, a polite, distant smile that said we were both moving on. I nodded, feeling strangely relieved. I found a quiet spot near the library, away from the music and the laughter. I checked my phone, half hoping for a message from Diana, but there was nothing. I scrolled through old texts, looking for something to anchor me, but all I found were reminders of a life that no longer fit. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting a waiter or maybe Emily, but it was Diana. She hesitated in the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her. "Sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not," I said quickly, standing up. "I just needed a break from the crowd." She smiled, a real smile this time, and stepped into the room. The library was dimly lit, the shelves lined with old books and family photos. She walked over to a window, looking out at the garden where we'd just been. "I used to come in here when I needed to think," she said. "It was the only place in the house where I felt like I could breathe." I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to admit. "It's peaceful." She turned to face me, her eyes searching mine. "Ethan, about what I said earlier." "You don't have to explain," I interrupted, not wanting her to feel embarrassed. But she shook her head. "No, I do. I shouldn't have said it, but I meant it. I've spent so many years pretending everything is fine, playing the role everyone expects. Sometimes I forget what it feels like to want something just for myself.